All right. Morning. Hello. Xavier, Bina, Shanku. Good to see y'all. Good to see y'all. How's it going? We've got fun weekend. We've got Bevy 0.15 out. Morning Purple. How's it going? So yeah. We got Bevy 0.15 yesterday. Almost 300 contributors. I think that's more than last time. I think that's more than 0.14. Yeah. So the number of contributors, number of pull requests has been going up every release. Looks like 294, about 50 up, about 300 more pull requests, 200 more pull requests, something like that. 250, which is great. This is only going to get continue to get bigger, which is wild. I don't know where the top end of that is. Yes, wonderful news. Bevy is growing. It's healthy. It's doing well. I think there's things everybody wants from it, but that will always be true. So I think they called out required components as the first thing, and then a couple of rendering features, stuff like that. Bubbling observers made it in. That made it in like 3 months ago. We talked about that a long time ago, actually. Animation masks and the generalized animation and the additive blending is what we've been working with over the last couple streams and whatnot. Let me see if I can run the example. So I've been adding to this for various reasons. I bought Substance Painter and decided to start texturing things. So I've been messing around with this a little bit. Got the floor, the cube, and the wall. I pulled out into Substance Painter, textured, pulled back into Blender, exported Gltf to Bevy. But this little really basic character here has a waving animation and then separately a walking animation. And those are additively blended between the two animations with animation events tied to the waving clip. Looks nice. Yeah, I don't know that it looks like nice, but it was useful to build, we'll say. But yeah, animation or additive blending, bone masking, and animation events are all 0.15 features. Yeah, it shows the potential. Yeah. I think that it's useful in that respect. It's not something I would send anyone and go, look look at this. Bevy remote protocol is very cool too. That's 0.15. This allows you to send HTTP requests to your Bevy game and get back information or mutate components and stuff like that. Maybe we'll do like a pseudo editor playing with that API at one point. This is Yabai, which I'm almost certain I'm pronouncing wrong because it's not an English word. But it is wonderful. Not similar to gRPC because it's literally just HTTP and JSON. So it doesn't have any like fancy data structures or anything like that, or fancy packings or whatever. But it is an RPC. You basically send the method that you want, send a request ID, and then in this case, I think they're fetching the components for an entity, which is just a transform. It'll always give you back these like really long full module paths, which is interesting. Yeah, macOS has a tiling window manager in that somebody keeps it up to date and maintained across many different macOS versions, which is very thankful that they do that. Yeah, classic JSON RPs. Yeah, so it's like there's a URL, you send whatever, you get back stuff. Very nice though, very cool. Very happy that went in because the editor is going to need that, and having that in stable kind of for people to actually use is really important. Curves are also huge. I haven't done much with curves yet. But you can create curves, sample curves, reparameterize curves, and the most obvious usage of curves is, you know, easing functions. So you can basically, I don't want to make the claim that you can animate any value, but you can animate pretty much any value now with like curves and the generalized animation and stuff like that, which is really fun. Function reflection. This is something I didn't mention in the video, actually. I dropped the video this morning for 0.15. I didn't really talk about reflection because it feels like something that, like, reflection isn't interesting unless you're already deep inside of Bevy and trying to use, you know, like the scene implementation or something, or like, you know, like you have to be already deep into Bevy to be using reflection or to care about like changes to reflection. But they are very cool changes. You can now reflect functions. You're actually rather interested in easing functions and curves, but not for animation for day-night cycles. Interesting. Is the implication there that you would want to like speed up the nighttime or something? Yeah, there's a whole function registry now. This was multiple PRs to get working. Yeah, it's gonna be really cool for auto serializing types for networking and stuff like that. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's it's how do I say this? The YouTube video that I make for 0.15 is usually for people, because the vast majority of people aren't using Bevy. So like Bevy 0.15 is an opportunity to be like, hey, look at the cool stuff Bevy can do. And function reflection is very, very, very cool, but it's not really easy to see how that would fit into like a game that you were going to make. This is also very cool. You can now do detection of what changed a resource. This has been in for a little bit, but now if you do, I think it's the changed, not the changed filter, but the changed query. Yeah, change detection query for changed by component. And then you just get these extra functions. Is added, is changed. Changed by is really the new thing. So you can figure out like why a component or a resource has been changed, which is fantastic, honestly. Curving the day-night cycle is something you've been considering. Nighttime is kind of a dead time in one of your projects. You'd also get the transition between day and night feeling just right and looking nice. Right now you lerp and it's decent, but it feels a little off and too smooth. Interesting. Yeah, I guess I could see. I don't know. I'm thinking about like the day-night cycle in Minecraft right now and trying to figure out if the sunrise is actually different. I guess it could matter because it could look weird while the sun is on the horizon. It could like not necessarily be what you want it to be like. Yeah, I can see curves being used there. Change detection is very, very cool. And of course, a bunch of like optimizations, performance improvements, things like that. Custom cursors are in now. Long asked for feature. Yeah, this API just works. Just grab a PNG and use it. Uniform mesh sampling is something we used in a game that we were building last like release cycle. We had to do this ourselves, and it was like, I don't know, I want to say it was like 60, 75 lines of code, something like that, to like do the sampling. And it didn't work in all cases because I was doing specific things. So having sampling on meshes is really, really nice, especially seeded sampling. Can Bevy do what Unreal does? In some respects, yes. In some respects, no. Bevy doesn't have an editor, so you can't like edit your game inside of the engine. Yeah, I don't know. It depends. I mean, like Bevy has support for meshlets, which are basically a nanite-like thing, but Unreal has like full teams of people working on nanite, I think. So like, it's incredible that somebody built meshlets for Bevy, but I would bet you that the state of the art is probably still inside of Unreal. So yeah, I don't know. There's some things you can do and there's some things you can't. Really depends. Oh yeah, I remember this PR going in. Event mutator. So like there's this idea where if you do like, let's say like a Minecraft plugin or something like that, that there are events that the game fires that the plugin wants to modify that the game then uses to run logic. And this is basically a way for you to say, hey, I want to subscribe to these events so that I can mutate them so that I can have an impact on that gameplay. So this is very interesting for like, I guess, third-party scripted plugins or something like that. You want to see the megalites thing? Yeah. I don't know a lot about megalites. I've seen them mentioned a couple times. Stochastic direct lighting. Light sampling. This is path tracing. Ray tracing. Yeah, path tracing. Probably path tracing because ray tracing just means everything these days, I think. That's very cool. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how much goes towards ray tracing, especially when WGPU's ray tracing stuff. I think it actually made it in. Now that I think about it, I can't actually remember if it was the basic stuff or like, yeah, ray tracing follow up, ray queries, I think might have been the PR that I was thinking of. See if I can recognize the comments here. Yeah, so ray queries. This is like really low level stuff, so I'm not really going to get into it, but the idea is that if you wanted to do ray tracing and use hardware APIs, you kind of need either an extension to WGPU or like this stuff to get in. So it's very exciting to see movement on that front. If you understood what you saw, megalights is mainly a speed up for global illumination when using lots of lights. Yeah, that makes sense. I would imagine that the previous attempt at global illumination is resource intensive enough to make ray tracing worth doing. Isometry types. Oh, there's on replaced too now. So on insert, on remove, on not on update. I don't think on changed made it. I know there was a PR for on changed at one point, but I think Alice actually put up a PR originally for like a component on changed version, or maybe it was an issue. Maybe nobody ever did it. Mutate observer. There we go. Yeah, this is the one I was originally thinking of, I think. I don't know why this got closed, but I do know that this is like very hot path. Like, you don't want on mutate observers on everything because you don't want to have to like call a function on every single mutation to every component. So I'm not sure where this work is actually. There are also immutable components that might be going in too. Looks like immutable components might be the preferred way. Yeah, okay, we'll see. Anyway, there's immutable components that are potentially going in the 0.16 cycle. We'll see if they actually make it in or not. Am I still on Twitter? No, not really. I have my account because I'm not going to like, I'm never going to delete my account because I don't want somebody to like pick up the account and start tweeting as me. But I'm mostly on Mastodon and Blue Sky these days. Same name, so it's easy to find me. By the way, it's an awesome hat. Yeah, I actually have two of them. I got them custom made. Figured, I don't know. Every once in a while, I get a batch of custom hats made. So this time I have the Bevy logo, which makes sense because I do this stream every weekend. I would say that I would buy merch from the Bevy shop instead if they had one, but typically merch doesn't fit me. So, yeah, vertex index arrays got packed into single buffers. Screenshot got a rewrite. There's some helpers now for observers. Those are very cool. State scoped events. I forgot about state scoped events. So the idea here is that if you're familiar with state scoping already, then things get removed whenever you move from one state to another. And this is for clearing events when you move from one state to another. So you don't have like overlapping events or like events you haven't processed or whatever. The cached one-shot systems is also very cool. This is a significantly better API for doing one-shots. Although, I still... like, one-shots are great. Observers may be better. Right? It's good to have the one-shot system API. But I think if you're intending to do this more often, then probably observers, unless you're running a whole system set. Like if you're doing a turn-based game and you want to run an entire system set, schedule everything out, make sure it all runs in the right order and everything. But yeah. Still nice to have the API. You've never fully understood the one-shot system API? Think of it like an observer without firing an event. You just run the system at that time. Oh, fallible system parameters made it into. We were talking about this the other day. So there's these new query parameters, single option, or not option, option is not new, single and populated. So instead of doing query.single, you can do single as query. I don't think there's an example right here, but maybe there is somewhere else. And then the system won't run unless there's one. But that means that you need the concept of fallible system parameters, because otherwise that would have normally panicked. So now, when you have fallible system parameters, like using single, the default is it warns once when it fails to run, and then doesn't warn anymore after that, or you can change it to never warn if you know it's going to do that. You love seeing the ECS side of things develop? Yeah. I mean, the ECS system is easily one of the most advanced currently in existence. I wouldn't say it's like the most advanced, because I think there are dedicated ECSs that don't have game engines attached that probably have people work on them very specifically. Yeah. Yeah, the old API was like you had to create the system, you had to get the ID for the system, then you had to put that into the run. That's what changed in this this release. So run system is now significantly easier to use because it automatically caches instead of you manually needing to build the cache up. Maybe you got it wrong. You just have normal systems, some fire events, some loop through the events, or just handle the last event, does nothing if no event was fired this frame, but all your systems run every frame. Why do you say maybe you got it wrong? I mean, normal systems are fine. Inspector eGUI updated, sick. That's exciting. We should do an update here of just the demo that we have running over here. No standard, very cool. I want to run Bevy on a Pico. It would be very cool to have it run on consoles too. And this is kind of, I don't want to call it a prerequisite because it's not necessarily a prereq, but it's like really useful ahead of time work for doing consoles, especially retro consoles, but also modern consoles. Fallible parameters are amazing. Definitely cleans up a lot of the code you have in most of your projects. Nice. That's dope. Yeah, I like moving query.single into the system parameters. I haven't used it too much in my own games yet. Obviously, I mean 0.15 just came out. Maybe one-shot systems or systems that react to triggers are more adapted to what you do you don't know. I think it depends. So the huge difference between like an event reader and event writer and observers is that you can batch the observers. So, or sorry, you can't batch the observers. You can batch the event reader. Wow, messed up. So if you do an event reader, you can batch the processing of those events into that one system. That one system then runs, I'm going to say at one point during the frame, but what it actually runs at is whenever you schedule it to run. So you could theoretically schedule it at all times right after the systems that create the events. And then you would have batching at multiple points during the frame. But yeah, so event reader writer if you need to batch the events in any way. Observers if you want things to just happen, because I think it matches better with like people's mental model of how things are supposed to happen. Because commands are deferred, right? But if you do an observer event, then it's run as soon as possible, more or less. And that can run recursively. It can also fire more events, which means that the work you're doing happens like as soon as it reasonably can, as opposed to happening somewhere later in the frame. So I don't know that I personally use run system in the future very much at all. I think I would use observers first. And then when it comes to run system, like if I ran into an issue with observers, I would switch to a run system. Like it's a nice API to have. I don't necessarily think it's the one that I'm going to default to in the future. But there's nothing wrong with just setting up systems in a schedule and running them. Especially if you have like really well-defined like event emitters and event readers, right? If you know when all of your events are going to be emitted and you can read them at a specific time, batch process them, and then have the effect of the thing happen, then event readers and writers are great. Hierarchy traversal. There's a couple of new functions for hierarchy traversal, which is nice. The other thing about hierarchy traversal is that observer events are now traversable. Bubbling. They bubble. Sorry. So when you have an observer event happen, it will follow the parent component up the hierarchy tree. So you can have observers listening up that whole hierarchy tree, which is really, really cool. That's very similar to the way like the DOM events work if you've ever worked on the web. One of the really interesting things about that is that while using the parent new type for traversing that hierarchy tree is the default, and it's very useful for that in general, especially for like UI, right? Button in here, listener out there. You can also replace that with anything. So you can actually like do any train of hierarchy traversal that you want to do using those components, which is very, very cool. And that's per event too. Oh, the storage buffer asset. This made it in like mid-cycle. Significantly easier to use storage buffers now. And then there's a whole bunch of small things like multi-entity access got a lot easier. This function actually accepts an array now. See if there's an example here. Yeah, so you see world entity here with an entity ID or world entity here with an array, which is awesome. I do wonder how people are going to discover this usage, but I guess at some point you have to read the docs for the function anyway. This is kind of like one of those hidden things where if you don't see it in an example and you're not used to Rust and you're not used to like constant generics or something, then you're like, I don't understand how that works. Accumulated mouse input, stable interpolation. This made it in like, if I remember correctly, basically immediately after 0.14, and I think before 0.14 actually released. And I've wanted to use it since then. This is stable interpolation based on Freya's YouTube video for stable interpolation, which is fantastic. I think that's pretty much it for like the long tail of stuff. There's a lot of really cool things. Cosmic text, for example, is like made a big change in 0.15 alongside required components, but will make bigger changes in the future. You can construct random splines that are cyclic now. Retained rendering world is a big one, but I didn't really spend that much time on it in the video because unless you're already writing graphics code, this doesn't like really matter to you. How would someone begin to start learning Bevy now? Do you already know how to program? All right, I'm gonna start upgrading this other example over here too. Yeah, do you already know how to program is the first question. A little. A little in what language? I think that Bevy is actually a great test bed for learning how to write Rust. So if you know a little Rust, yeah, perfect. If you know a little Rust, then kind of diving into the examples is a great option. So if you have zero Bevy knowledge at all, there is a quick start guide on the website. This is a reasonable place to start for your very, very, very first Bevy app. This will start to teach you like that systems exist, how to make sure that you're set up, to write things, et cetera, et cetera. And then once you get past that and you're like, okay, how do I actually write a program with this? It may be worth going into the Bevy examples repo, or like the Bevy examples in the repo. And this will have a whole bunch of different things. So for example, this is a 3D scene that just spawns a bunch of meshes and lights and stuff like that. Why does this look empty? Oh, did we move the 3D scene to... Interesting. Oh, 3D shapes is what I was thinking of, not 3D scene. Yeah, so if you go into these examples have a bunch of the API usage, they have a bunch of the functions and whatnot. You will have to learn what resources are, etc. But definitely like spend time just running these examples and then kind of messing with them. And that's the way I would start learning. And then as soon as you feel ready, just start building your own thing. And like you're going to run into a wall at some point and then fix the wall, run into a wall, fix the wall, etc. I actually probably wouldn't use the Bevy Flock 2D template for a beginner. I think that it really depends, I guess. This doesn't feel like a beginner-friendly template to me. Right? There's so much here that it will be hard to figure out what actually does anything. And I know that they used to have like custom abstractions for stuff. So I don't know that I would suggest it for this. Do you have an estimated time for the Bevy editor? Also, haven't checked in on Bevy in a while. What's the progress on GUI editors? No estimated time for an editor. There is prototype level work happening right now. So if you check out the Bevy editor prototypes repo, this is kind of where that prototyping is happening. There's a bunch of crates and widgets. So things like color pickers, command palettes, et cetera, that are being built out. There's a website with kind of like the vision and the goal. So somewhere in here, there's a roadmap. So the project has been created, and the next step is standalone read-only editor, which the Bevy remote protocol we talked about earlier in the stream will help with a lot. So the goal here is to have basically, you can add the remote plugin into your Bevy app, and then artists or whatever, or people who want to work with like level design and things like that, can then, this is read only, but use that to actually edit levels inside of a running Bevy game, that kind of thing. And it gets more complicated as you get further down this roadmap. But yeah, no timeline on like it shipping, but Bevy doesn't do timelines in general. Again, check out that repo if you're more concerned or more interested in like the day-to-day. But is the vision to have a top tier level editor like Godot Unity? I don't really want to speak for what they want the end goal to be. I think that right now, a lot of the focus is on getting to like the first stage here, which is different than stage 5, right? I assume that as this gets bigger, people will want more and more stuff. Today, the answer is go use LDTK and bring the JSON file format into Bevy. And there are other projects like Bevy ECS LDTK that do that kind of thing for you. But yeah, I don't know that I would speak for what it's going to look like, you know, stage 5 plus. I think that like looking at these stages it's a lot of work. Like it is a lot of work. Thing can load scenes from disk can load scenes from disk using a native file picking widget. A lot of this is also going to be like BSN based, and we're kind of waiting on BSN. I don't think there's even PR open for it yet. Did we rename the scene UI issue? No. Yada yada. Maybe it's in the blog post. I think it's in the blog post, honestly. Yeah. So this is kind of the thing that kicked off the working group for the Bevy seed notation and stuff. There's a lot in here, and required components was like the first major milestone. So required components shipping in 0.15 is a step towards editor. It's a fairly big one too. But in here, you'll also find mention of something called BSN. And this is supposed to be like an asset-driven way to define scenes. And we're kind of still waiting for this to show up. I don't know when that's going to happen. Cart's kind of working on it. So, dang. Got something stuck in the back of my throat there. But yeah, so like progress is being made. They're going in a direction and things are going, but it's not like going to come out tomorrow. Let's see, what do we have here? Did I commit everything I needed to commit? I think so. I'll push this up first. I'm expecting this to just work. There was one PR that we were using from Maine. I haven't actually checked to see if that got in to the release, but I assume it did. For you, that's the biggest feature, I guess, barring mass adoption, since Bevy core feature-wise is already viable enough. Yeah, I think Bevy is good for certain classes of games currently. I do think that everybody agrees with you that for wider market adoption, it needs an editor. Everybody is aware of that, on some level at least. But it's very obvious, right? If you look at all of the other game engines, they all have something, right? We don't necessarily need to build Blender, but having something. Oh, sick. Are my files too big? Nice. Well, we won't be using Git LFS for this, so I'll have to figure out how to push that up later. Character.glb. That's unfortunate. This is something that I feel like nobody has a good solution to either. Especially for me who does a lot of open source work. Like I can't do Git LFS. Because if enough people download, I get charged for it. and LFS is like fairly expensive. So that's really unfortunate. Maybe I'll clear the history and do a different branch on this and remove some of the textures and stuff. But like it makes it hard because I want to be able to do this. I want to be able to just ship stuff to GitHub. But they make it kind of hard when it comes to assets. I don't even really need the history of the assets either. Let's see if Bevy Asset Loader got a release yet. I think that it wouldn't matter. Yeah, 22 RC1 is, I think, the current release for 15. So let's do Bevy Asset Loader. '22. Was it -rc.1? Yeah, the GLB contains the textures. It could potentially be moved to a separate file. All of that is true. 0220 RC1. I always forget the last 0. So ideally, this works. Hands in the air if you think this is just going to work for us. 394 is a good amount of dependencies. If something were wrong with the Bevy versions, then we would see upwards of 400, almost 500, because we would have multiple copies of every crate. So 394 is a good number. You saw a lot of non-UI... non-UI Macs, like people who didn't want a UI. I think everybody that works on the project agrees that a UI is necessary, right? I think there are people in the community for sure who are like, I don't need a UI to do what I'm doing and whatnot. That's fine for them. But I think everybody working on the project understands that an editor is required for larger adoption. There's really there's no way to argue against that, honestly, because you can't have artists using Bevy and needing to write Rust, right? Like it just doesn't work. You can't tell somebody to go learn an entire language to like load a Gltf. GLB is more efficient to work with. Yeah, for shipping stuff. Can GLB link to image files for textures instead of including the image data directly? I actually don't know the answer to that. There's probably a setting that I could set. One of the things that I don't have a good workflow for is like, how do you do Gltf versus GLB, like development versus production Gltf stuff? So maybe I'll figure that out this month. Could not compile. Vec2 not found. No. Is that not in the... So I thought this made it in. Maybe it didn't. But there are a number of like utility functions for constructing vectors and stuff. Oh, right. I killed all of my Rust analyzer yesterday. So in Bevy Math, there is this vec2. And it's kind of nice to use. And I know Francois uses it in a lot of their code. That's, I think, where I first saw it. But it is in the standard library, or like the prelude. I just don't know if it's in the release right now. Yeah, you think you can do it, but it's not done very often. Gltf pipeline might help. Yeah, also, like, a lot of it doesn't change. Splitting out the textures for development would be cool, but just having a better large asset solution would be even better, right? Like, doing GLTFs with separate textures or whatever, fine. Maybe even preferable for like PRs and stuff, right? To see how textures change. But I would just like to have something that could ship large files, multiple large files, much more easily. Cool. So I don't know what else is up to date. We have, I think Hikasu said Bevy Inspector eGUI is up to date, right? Can we just pull that in? Wonder what version they are on. Then there's this stuff we can re-enable. Yeah, full asset pipeline, totally separated from code source pipeline is clearly better and necessary for a studio. I don't know that I really agree with that. I mean, like, I get why people would separate the two. Our dependencies jumped by about 50 there. I feel like Bevy Inspector eGUI doesn't have a 0.15 release. We'll see in a second. Bevy app 0.15, 28. Okay, that should be good. That's a lot of transitives for that. Last question on the editor stuff. Is Bevy editor prototypes the best place for you to start if you want to contribute towards editor development? Yeah, that and the editor channel in Discord is a great place to hang out. The editor channel in Discord, you'll see all of the conversation happening about stuff. If you want to work on something specific, I would probably go to the Discord channel, say, hey, I'm interested in working on XYZ. Can I just go and do this? And somebody will be like, yeah, sure, of course. Or they'll redirect you to something that is better. That's the worst part about waiting for third-party plugins to update. Yeah, for each release. I think the release candidate cycle has helped a lot in that sense. One thing that made it hard this cycle is the retained rendering change. And, well, the retained rendering change made it in fairly late. And that was a fairly impactful PR. Required components felt like they made it in pretty late as well. And then the retained rendering stuff also required a couple of PR fixes over a week or two. So the main branch before the release candidate was actually pretty unstable, which made it tough to like do it at that time. What do you get for Rust Adventure? Rust Adventure stuff is listed on the site. Obviously, Bevy 0.15 just came out, so I'm working on updates for the Bevy courses that are on the site for 0.15. I already have 2048 mostly done, and then I need to do Snake as well. So if you're looking for Bevy 0.15 educational material, it's not on the site yet, just to be clear. I do want to get better about having them ready the day of. I think that maintaining the courses based on the main branch through the release cycle is going to be my next move, but we'll see. Is there a timeline for them to come out? Basically as soon as possible, but I will also be doing a bunch of work during December for Advent of Code. So I would say January. I wouldn't necessarily say like next week. The lessons all have to be scripted. That's fairly high on my list to do, but knowing that the snake game requires more work than the 2048, both of them will probably be ready in January. You need to update your Bevy Blendy cameras plugin. You'll try later today if you can switch to Bevy's internal picking. Otherwise, you need to wait for Bevy Mod Raycast. Cool. I'm very interested if you successfully do that or not. I just realized I'm not despawning any of these spheres. It doesn't matter, but yeah. Okay, so we've got the character here. Children, entity, children, armature. Player, graph handle, animation target. Should be more children here. Yeah. Here are all the bones for the children. Nice. Oh, you can see the number of vertices and indices and meshes now? That's cool. I don't know that that was always true. Is my Advent of Code setup the same as last year? I'm about 12 hours behind on my Advent of Code. I am going to make changes to the repo today. Unfortunately, that means that I think it starts in 12 hours. So I'll be a little bit tight on timeline there. But I'm going to make a couple of changes. I need to make sure that the scripts are up to date. I think there were documented changes that happened to cargo script, so I just need to make sure those scripts work. I need to remove all of the input from the repo because I don't want to get 15 issues this year about how I'm supposed to remove the input from the repo. But yeah, my AOC setup is going to be maybe roughly the same, but I'm going to make some changes to it. You read the docs and examples. It should be possible. Nice. Yeah, there's a couple of camera plugins at this point. It's nice to see that this demo just updated well. Do I want to update now? Defer. Let's not update something on stream. That would be great. Updating things on stream is bad. Cool. So this is our GLTF for that stuff. I think I have, so there's a scene, there's actually two scenes in this GLTF file. One is the character with all the bones and the armature and stuff like that, which is very simple rig. I need to figure out how to reset my cursor to origin. And then we've got an empty on their hand, which is where all the balls are spawning. And then we've got this, which is the test scene for Substance Painter. So these textures are all coming from Substance Painter. One of the really interesting things I've noticed is that I've had to specify backface culling here a couple of times. I think actually what happened is that all of these end up getting an alpha texture. Shift S. Cool. Let me test that out. Perfect. Thank you. Sick. So let's do that, because that is actually kind of fun as a workflow to see. And I just started working with it. So can I select the sphere? Okay, there we go. So we've got this sphere. I guess we could scale it. We're going to have to move it a little bit anyway. So let's... see? Edit mode scaling. Who's proud of me? Let's move this 0.5 on the z-axis. We're going to move it like over here somewhere because we'll probably be able to see it. So we've got this sphere now. The sphere should already have a UV map. Select all. Yeah, so we've got a UV map here. Not necessarily like, you know, whatever, the best UV map or whatever, but it's the default one. So we go back to modeling. We're on sphere here. I guess we just keep it named sphere. Why not? I want to make sure that there's a material on this first. We'll do new here. Call this sphere material. Doesn't matter what it is. The reason I'm putting a material on it now is because when we bring it into Substance Painter has a number of options. The move in edit node was probably not what I see the origins over there. Thank you for the heads up. The question is now, how do I move it back? Oh, Shift S again. I was thinking that was only going to be cursor. Cursor to selected. I guess cursor to selected. That's going to be like the middle of the sphere. I think that's fine. I'm cool with that. I don't think it'll matter that much for us, but... oh, right. That doesn't move the actual origin. Origin to geometry. Search menu set origin. Is this going to be in a different mode? Set origin. Okay, there we go. Object mode. Origin to geometry. Sick. All right. How many people does it take to recenter the origin of a sphere? At least 3 at this point. 4? At least 4. Okay, so with that, we can do export FBX. I don't love the workflow here specifically. So we'll export the FBX. We aren't really doing anything specific. We'll do selected objects so that it's just the FBX of the sphere. And get rid of this for a second. I don't know what the sad smiley face is for. Is it for the Blender comment? We don't advocate for hating things here. Okay, so Substance Painter, new. We're gonna use Blender starter assets here. Document resolution, I'm just gonna chunk up to 4K, why not? And for this file, we have to go find that FBX export for the sphere. Hit OK, and then we get a sphere to paint. Now, I think that this won't make that much of a difference for us because we're using primitives. But the other thing that I've been seeing a lot of people do is baking the texture maps. So over here, normal, world space, ID, ambient occlusion, curvature, position, thickness, height. So we can bake those. And then go back to painting mode. And now we have all of those mesh maps here. So we could use them theoretically in a material or whatnot. And then I don't know that I have anything specifically to do for this. So maybe we just, is this a material or a smart material? Glitter. Yeah, I think that Blender is an amazing tool, and the fact that it's open source and free and usable for all these things is just so incredible. Okay, that's paint roll. Gene pocket? Okay. Maybe rock face would be fun. So this is pretty basic usage in general. Maybe there's something else that I can put on this as well. But it's like a layering system. Just like, I think this one's the add layer. Yeah, it's a layering system just like, you know, Photoshop or whatever. So like if I wanted to be like, hey, there's some glitter on like this section of it for whatever reason, you can just paint that in. And then file, export textures. Sphere material, need to pick the export. I need to pick the export every single time. I wonder if that's a me issue. I mean, it's definitely a me issue, but. And then assets, I've been putting these inside of textures. We'll open that. PNG, 8-bit, yada yada, export. Saves all of that stuff out. So we've got the alpha, base color, displacement, emission, metallic, normal, roughness. I'm going to close this, I think. We can always just redo that. Not save. We can always redo that. I think that keeping Substance Painter open is fairly memory intensive, so I don't want to like have it open with Blender and with everything else. So in here then, we are on our sphere. By default, we've got the principled BSDF, basic PBR stuff. If we do Control-Shift-T on the node, I think. Maybe it was Command-Shift-T. There we go. Select it, Control-Shift-T, go to textures, and then we go sphere material through alpha. And down here, the button says like principled texture setup. So it'll take all of those and connect them all. So all of the textures we just generated from Substance Painter are now connected through the BSDF. There's still a problem here, but we'll take a look at that in a second. Let's see. Can we rotate this maybe? Oh, that glitter material is really interesting in the way that it's behaving. I wonder if that's even going to be usable like that. I haven't run into anything yet that really, really caused a problem, but there are definitely almost certainly going to be issues with the materials and the workflow. Do Blender procedural materials, do Blender procedural textures work in Bevy? Probably have to bake them, right? Yes. If you are going to do procedural textures of any kind, you would need to bake them to a texture and then use them like that. That is like there's no way to my knowledge to do things like geometry nodes and whatever and pull them out into Bevy either. You have to bake them all. Yada yada. I'm still on Blender 4.2. Yes, I'm still on Blender 4.2. I'm on Blender 4.2 because I guess Blender is not my core software. And 4.2 is currently working for me. So I'll update at some point. Also, Blenvy hasn't gotten an update yet. So Blenvy only works with 4.2 as far as I'm aware. I haven't tested 4.3 yet. TBD, we'll see. You know, your mileage may vary. Terms of service here. So now we have this material with like this rock texture on the sphere and this like little glittery thing here. I actually don't know if that glitter is rendering correctly. I spent zero time on figuring that out, but yeah. Hey, Chris, will you do Advent of Code this year? Yes. I actually intended to do a video. I had the day wrong. I thought it started tomorrow. It starts tonight. So my plan this year is to actually suggest other people who are doing this for the first time. Oh, wait, the animation isn't working. Do we have to go debug? The file at character GLB does not contain the label asset animation 1. It contains 49 assets. Animation 0, materials. Interesting. Something went wrong. Yeah, so I think I'm going to make a video if I can get my stuff together today. And what I'm going to tell people who are new to Advent of Code to do is to only do the first exercise, the first part. I've been thinking about this quite a bit over the last year. I did all 50 days, all 2 parts, both days last year. And it gets really intense towards the end. But the thing that I think is the most harmful is the idea that when you do day 1 or day 2, it can randomly spike in difficulty in a way that is not fun at all. So I think that my recommendation for people who are new to Advent of Code cannot be do everything. Because those spikes in difficulties are like more for the people who are really interested in having a challenging game and not people who are learning stuff. So I have to make some kind of video that is like, hey, if you're going to do Advent of Code this year, great, wonderful. It's a fun thing to do, but like commit to only doing the first part of every day or something like that. So I think for the videos that I make, I'm going to lead by example and do the first part every day. I'll probably do the second part on my own, but yeah, I think that's my path for Advent of Code this year. I need to update my repo later today too. There's a way to do the equivalent of Blender shader nodes in Bevy by writing shaders, but it's far from trivial. Yeah, I mean, all of the shader nodes are just code, right? So if you're going to do like a UV map, like translation, you can do that in code. It's actually easier in some respects because like a lot of nodes, like this is already getting very big. I already can't even show it here, right? So like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and this is just like 7 textures, right? So if you're doing more complicated stuff, these node graphs get very, very big and hard to show. But often these are just like half a line of code or 1 line of code or something like that. So if you can do something procedurally in Blender, it's a very good bet that you could also write the code to do it in Bevy and do a direct translation. I'm not saying it would be easy for somebody that doesn't know how the things work, but it absolutely is possible. Okay, so let's go to scene here. Did I mess up? Did I accidentally delete something? Animation. Action editor. Armature. There's the wave action. There's only the wave action. Only the wave action. When did I delete the walking animation? Dang. You've struggled a lot with WGSL because, as far as you know, a lot of the Bevy documentation is just reading the source. Yeah, I think that for a lot of the translation from Blender to Bevy, a lot of the difficulty lies in figuring out what the Blender node is even doing in the first place, and then also how to replicate that on the Bevy side. So things that are straightforward, like doing, I don't know, a little bit of math or something, right? It's just a little bit of math in WGSL. Something a little bit more complicated, like how do you load from data from a texture? You have to go find, you know, the texture load function or whatever. And that's probably reading like the WGSL spec or something. And then there's like the more advanced stuff that's like, oh, okay, I don't even know what Blender is doing here because it's using like a user visible term for some algorithm. Then you have to go figure out what they mean by that. And then you have to take that and you have to go to Bevy and you have to be like, okay, does Bevy even support the kind of data I need? Yeah, the fake user needs to be active. I thought it was something like that. I didn't know that for sure, but that is really unfortunate. I definitely, you know, closed Blender, reopened it, and lost my animation. I guess we do something a little bit simpler for animation then. How do I do the fake user? This button? Yeah. Dang. Like, it's one click and I lost the animation. Rip. Let's do, I don't know. Do we do walking again? I don't really think we necessarily need to do this again. I do want the demo to work though. Let's say it's walk. Let's do what is the keyframe button? Is it Control I? Control Shift I? It's neither of those. I'm not even in pose mode, am I? There we go. Pose mode. No, I don't. I overwrote it. Well, I mean, I have the... Oh, I have probably... I probably have an old file with it. Actually, that would be a very interesting exercise to do. So let me do that. Let's do GitHub, Rust Adventure. I don't think I've been into this repo yet, so... So I'm assuming that this has the animation in it. There were 2 commits that I didn't push. Okay, we have the GLB. Just I. Okay, good to know. So let me... I actually don't know how to delete this. It's fine. We can change the indices. The blend file, not the GLB. Oh. I guess that makes more sense. All right. Well, we have the blend file downloading. Okay. There's the blend file. What do I think it is? Import. Is this going to import everything, or can I just grab the animation? Let's see, new action, unlink action. Let's see. So if I can navigate inside of them, are you saying do this inside of it does not want to let me do that in anything. So I assume you mean inside of Blender. Append, downloads, character.blend. Perfect. Action, walk, append. And I assume that is walk 1 now. Sick. Let me save that. Let me rename that to walk remove me. We'll rename walk 1 to just walk. Thank you. That was super helpful. I do want to get rid of this if I can. Include armature. I don't think there's an easy way to just not include that, so. Armature, reset, rest ranges. Action filter? There we go. Action filter. Show filtering options. Oh, yeah, I could definitely like reboot and it'll delete it for me. But yeah, normally with a pen, they're made local, but you can also link stuff the same way. In that case, if you imported from changes, it would change. Yeah. So basically, I could have a whole project set up in multiple blend files. I could have the animations in one and like the character models in another and link them between each other and then make an update in the blend file and it would update in those other blend files. That totally makes sense. But we did append, which basically, I did verify the fake user was active, by the way. This, we are active. And they both have the F in front of them. I would like an easy way to get rid of that action, because if I'm going to do an export, like I want to remove this one. So maybe I go into... I thought there was something bigger up here that I could use. Oh, it's in here. Okay. So walk is here. I guess it's only being... Yeah, okay, I see. So I can't actually access it from there. Control Shift O lets you reopen the file. Yeah, I mean, like, it feels hacky to reopen the file to remove something. I would have loved to know how to do that. The X button. Oh, this one. Just unlink it. Because I think what'll happen when we export this, right? So I export GLT or GLBF or GLB, sorry, GLTF or GLB. And then we run this again. This will have multiple animations, but it won't be... Oh, maybe it doesn't get exported. It confuses me that this is working correctly, because I feel like I have an extra animation. The animation event is no longer firing. That's interesting. So we need to go check our animation event. Oh, because we did the named animations. Yes. It worked. It worked. Okay, so we have wave and we have walk. Wave, for some reason, is no longer firing, and we have no indication of why. Second drop down, unused data. Second drop down, unused data. I don't think it's... Maybe because I unlinked it, it's no longer here, but... Interesting that these are considered not used. I'm pretty sure these are used for the floor. Oh, they're used in the other scene. Okay. Never mind. Okay, so we don't have our spawning working. Why is our spawning not working? We know that this worked in 0.15. We know it worked with the right data. So it is a data/configuration setup. So enable animations should be running. Which it does. Runs twice. Why does it run twice? Oh, because are we spawning two scenes? We're triggering on scene instance ready, but we're triggering on global scene instance ready. Maybe we have to trigger on a local one if we want to do it specifically like this. Let's leave it for now, but Yeah, okay. Unused data. I think we unlinked it and therefore it's no longer in unused data. But we'll see. So these animations are working, but for some reason the events aren't. I don't think these events are firing. Yeah, these events are not firing at all. So question becomes, why? We've got animation clips, right? Enable animations, wave clip, animation clips, get the wave, add the events to the wave. Are we playing the wave or did I use numbers? So we have animation 0 and animation 1, which I assume are the right thing, but we should probably just check. So animations to, yeah, so there are 3 animations in here. This is really interesting to me. So 0 is walk. 1 is walk remove me. And that means 2 is wave, or 1, 2, and 3. Is that what we're... Yeah. So 0, 1, and 2 are 1, 2, and 3. The middle one is the one that we don't want, but that is here. And then I think the issue is that I'm just playing a bunch of stuff. So the question is, I think this needs to be like that. Yeah. So adding to the animation graph and choosing which ones to play are independent. You don't need the graph to play an animation. I don't use AI tools, so that is not. So we have 0, 1, 2, and 3. So these indices are not the graph indices. I thought these were the graph indices. But they are the Gltf animation indices? I feel confused about what index that is right now. So let's go to docs. Let's go to animation player. So animation player takes a node index. So let's start with nothing. And nothing happens, which is good. That's what we want. Zero also does nothing. I'm just checking my assumptions about what is supposed to be happening here. 1 also does nothing. And then 2 should be the animation graph, right? So it's root node, blend node, and then 2 siblings is the way we've constructed this graph. So root node, blend mode, or blend node, sorry. And then the blend node is what we use down here to do the additions. So walking is now 0. And waving is now 2 because we have the in-between one. Except we have the asset labels. And this just needs to be a handle to an animation clip, right? Let's figure that out. That is add clip with mask. I'm in pet graph. I don't want to be in pet graph. Add clip with graph. Garf. Mask. It's with mask. Man, I am really jumbling my letters up or words up today. Add clip with mask. Clip is a handle to an animation clip. We already have the handles to these animation clips, actually. So instead of doing this by index, for entity player, wave mask bones, this is what I want to do. I want to take this, I want to bring it down here. And instead of asset server load, I want this. And that is an issue because we need to clone the handle. Cool. So I'm going to expect these instead and do I think that this is probably actually better done as a let else and not a expect. But I think it'll crash anyway at some point if we don't add these. So, okay, so we've got wave and walk, and I think that they are in the wrong spots. So this is supposed to be walk, and this is supposed to be wave. Or am I not actually running them yet? No, I'm not actually running them yet. So now we have walking, properly masked. This index, I would love to not have an index there as well. Can we go from clip to index? Hopefully it is the index of the animation you get by name, but index is in the array without names. Yeah. Yeah. So let's go animation player. But we also have animation clip, right? Handle to animation clip. And we also have graph. I don't want to look that up. Just give me the... I want this link, but in a different tab. Okay, so we've got animation player. Animation player play takes a node index. The node index is a node into the graph. Definitively. I would love to be able to grab the clip by name and then get the node index. So that would probably be something on graph, right? Returns the node with the given index. From clips, add edge. Feels really weird that we have to do this by index. And that we don't really have a good way of getting that index. Returns the graph node associated with the given index. This does not give anything except for a potential equality on the handle for the animation clip. It was the node index, not the animation clip index. You were way off. Yeah. So this is the, we have all the animation clips. The animation clips do technically have indices inside of the Gltf file. They are ordered, right? So right now we have 0, 1, and 2 because we have an irrelevant animation at 1. So when we build our graph, each of those nodes also has an index. This is a pec graph index for the animation graph. That tree is basically root node, blend node, so 0, 1, and then 2 siblings below that for 2 and 3. So I guess when we do the insertion, we know what animation we're actually building. So wave mask bones, add target to mask group. So when we do this specifically, add clip with mask probably returns us a node index, right? It does. So this could be built up automatically, I think, at this point. So walk node index and wave node index, and then walk node index, wave node index. So I think ideally, Jace, JB not. Adding the node returns the index. Yes, absolutely. Yes, that's what we just did. So walk node index and wave node index. We have walk and wave here in the named animations. When we add them to the graph, we know that this index is supposed to be like that. This overall feels like it should be abstracted somewhere, but I don't know what that would look like. I feel like there should be a way to have maybe an opinionated workflow, maybe some assumptions, but we should be able to take the data we get from Blender in this Gltf file and be able to build this animation graph and be able to access things by name. We can do it fairly manually. Right now we're doing a lot of manual bone masking paths and stuff. Also the mask group IDs could be generated by something. I guess this does have to be built at some point by somebody, right? Like, how do you know what the animation graph is supposed to be? Because we don't have a graph here. We have a bunch of actions. You suppose it makes sense you could have the same animation clip used, played for different character and not be in sync, so multiple animation players for the same animation clip. Yes, animation player is dedicated to the entity that it's on. So the animation clip makes sense to be in a graph, makes sense to be on an entity, right? The same way that like a transform is on an entity, right? The animation player, the graph, and the active clip that is playing will be pointed to by the graph and the player. But we don't have graph information here. Theoretically, if we did the NLA editor, we might have more of an indication of what's supposed to happen. But I also think that at some point it becomes programmatic too. So I think it would be hard. I think this kind of actually needs an editor. Not like not the full-fledged Bevy UI editor or whatever, but it needs like a show me the information in this Gltf file, let me hook up the animations in the way that I want to by name. Right? Because how do you construct this graph? Right now, it's very much, we're just deciding to do this in code. But if this data changes, then this code breaks, which is good on some level, but not good on other levels. But everything is working. Theoretically, the same graph can also be used by multiple entities, but with each node parameters being different for each entities. Yes, but I think you would just clone the graph at that point and modify it, right? If the node parameters are different, then it's a different graph, I think, according to Bevy's struct setup. All right, so if we have animation graph and it's, you know, full weight, blend node, half weight, like 2 siblings, full weight, and then like another sibling that comes from the other one, and it's like directly connected to the root, and that's full weight or something like that, then if you change the blend node from half to full, that is a different graph. Like the structure is still the same, but the data is different, and therefore the whole graph is different. So I think you would have to clone it anyway, even if you were creating it like that. Yeah, so the animation graph is just a struct, right? Like it's just a piece of data. So when we look at the animation graph, we can actually serialize it out to a RON file even. I think they have an example of that in the Bevy examples. Assets, animation graphs. So like this is an animation graph. It is the RON representation of that animation graph. So here are the nodes. The clips, look for specific clips in a GLB file. All of the edges are defined, and then the mask groups could also be defined, but there are none here. So like the graph is just data. And you could imagine this file, if you change this value, this blend value to 0.5, then that is a different graph. The structure of the graphs are the same, but because that value is different, they are not the same graph, right? And they don't result in the same animation. What if you want to modify a graph and have all entities that use that graph see the mods? Then you can definitely do that. If you want to do the same thing for everybody, the animation graph is actually a handle to an animation graph. right? So animation graphs are assets. So this animation graph that we create in this system somewhere, this is actually a handle to that animation graph. So if you wanted to modify the animation graph that a bunch of entities were using, and it was this graph, you could use that handle, get the animation graph, make a change. Everybody gets it. Let's get rid of example animation weights there. I've really liked doing this from the Gltf with the named animations. I think that maybe there's use cases for not doing the named stuff and using indices specifically, but I don't think I'm going to use it. I think I'm going to do full Gltf loading. It's interesting to have, I don't have it around anymore in the code. Maybe it'll show me the diff if I click on this. Yeah. It's interesting to have this like Gltf asset label animation 1 from asset. But what I really need is animation name from asset if I'm going to use it like that. But the blending weights are part of the graph and not of a graph parameters component individual to each entity is using that graph. Yes, the animation graph is somewhat poorly named, which is widely agreed upon at this point. It is actually just a blend tree. So when you think of it as a blend tree, if the blending values are different, then it is a different blend tree. It is not actually what you might think of as a more complicated like animation graph. I think the general consensus is that there will be something in the future that actually is more of an animation graph that deserves that name, but it is actually not the current animation graph. I think there's actually a PR to rename it, or there was. Yeah. 3 weeks ago, rename animation graph. Replace that with blend graph, rename animatable to blendable accordingly. I don't know if this is something that's going to make it in general. I think that this is a generally agreed upon thing. But it's 0.16, not 0.15. So we'll have to wait a couple months actually. But yeah, I need this to be like animation walk or something like that before I would consider using this like that. It's also a little awkward to have these mask groups defined like this. I have a constant for wave mask, right? So wave mask, walk mask. We should be able to do what? 1 and 2. Wave mask here. Wave mask. Expected U64, found U32. So these are different? One of these is a bitmask and the other is what? Add target to mask groups takes a animation target ID and a U32. The U32 is the bitmask. No, it's not. It's the ID. Adds an animation target to the mask group with the given ID. Let's open that example. You think what is after the hash in the Gltf path is actually a name. The animations are just named. No, they're not. They're actually indices. I don't think that they're named 0. I actually think that you can't use the names like that. I will double check again, but I'm pretty sure that they are indices for a reason. One thing you have in your head is that many things in Bevy are not meant to be used as is and are supposed to be extended upon like Gltf. You should extend with your own format that internally loads. I agree with that to some extent. I think that Gltf is probably not the be-all end-all of like file interchange formats either. So there have been multiple discussions in like rendering and stuff about not tying too tightly to what Gltf is. There are other formats, right? Not that scene description. I realized last second that typing in USD was going to give me dollars. And then there's material X. So USD, as far as I understand USD, it's an incredibly complicated spec in the sense that like not everybody is supposed to implement everything. And I think Pixar are probably the only people that do because they came up with it. But it's another scene description. And then there's Material X, which is another shader graph implementation and things like that. I think that my understanding is that Material X is interesting from the rendering perspective for that graphness. USD is not as interesting, and BSN and that kind of thing is the way forward for Bevy. There might be compatibility like there is with Gltf, but you've refactored the entirety of Bevy Gltf, and the asset label could be arbitrary, but is now just animation I. Yes, that was my understanding as well. Universal scene description is not game-oriented. It's more of an intermediate format to pass data between DCCs, Blender, Maya, etc. Yeah. Yes, but if you're using a file format to pass data between like artistic programs, then having support for pulling that in is also useful. You use USD in pretty much all of your projects. That's cool. I don't use it much at all. I don't know that I've ever used it, honestly. I've seen it before, but I don't really have a reason to use it. All right, let's see. This is mask group index. Mask group pass first. Huh? Oh, it's enumerating, isn't it? Yeah, okay. Interesting. Okay, so mask group index is just like 0, 1, 2, whatever. Add target to mask group. And then how are they specifying this? I guess they're not. Mask group state. Add mask group control. Yep. One of the problems with this is, okay, yeah, so they don't really, what is 0x3f in bitmask? So mask groups we've identified are definitely just numbers, like given IDs numbers. And then, what was the other thing we need? Add clip with mask. And then add clip with mask uses a U64. I feel like I'm now confused about what this is supposed to be. Okay, so the U64 is the bitmask, and the U32 is the ID. Those need to be new typed, in my opinion. So add clip uses the bitmask. Right? Which I think just works for us because of how simplistic our use case is. Because we aren't actually combining anything. Sick. Maybe these are in the wrong order. Walk and wave. Oh, they're still wrong. That's exciting. USD is quite involving to adopt, but it solves lots of issues, especially when multiple departments work on the same asset. There are also ideas about leveraging it at runtime to allow leveraging nice stuff like composition and variance. Very cool. I think Rust has binary literals. I am just inherently not a heavily binary understanding person, if that makes sense. See, so U64. I don't really want to write the literal. So 0B and then whatever, U32. So we could just do that, right? Because these are what, 1 and 2, if I remember correctly. And this actually needs to be U64. Can you use bit shifting and stuff? Yeah. It's really interesting that those are just fundamentally wrong. Right. Wave mask, walk mask, wave. Oh, you know what the problem is, actually, now that I think about it? It's that I hard coded the other mask. Add target to mask, walk mask. That's why I was getting confused, because I hard coded that to the other value, which means it'll never be masking properly. Which wasn't the problem in this situation. Let me debug the animation graph. I do think we have IDs for the first one, and let's get rid of on wave peak too. We know this is running. We don't need this anymore. How do you nest files in VS Code? You think you were using mod wrong? You mean for Rust? So if you have a file here, oh, that was a lot of logs. If you have a file here, just like main or whatever, in main, if I do like mod thing, then usually I use Rust Analyzer to do this for me. But you would be able to create, why is everything's messed up for a second? I can't right click on this directory. Let me do this. Let me reopen VS Code. Okay, so we've got mod thing here. Mod thing is not a file that exists. This is in main.rs right now, but should be lib.rs. Rust Analyzer with error lens is super useful for that. Super useful for the mod thing. Yeah. For some reason, not only is Rust Analyzer not working in that VS Code instance, but I couldn't even right click on the files. So usually I use Rust Analyzer like this. I write mod thing, and then I say create module at thing.rs. I prefer not using mod.rs, but you can definitely put that in a directory. So if you do this and you do thing, then inside of thing, you can also do this, right? And so on and so forth. And this will create another one. And once you're in thing, you have to go into the folder. So you can go main, thing, and then thing second. And then you have files in here, and you can do pub. Yes, Hukasu's also right. You could also do mod second. Let's do this in main, actually. So if I got thing here and I wanted these to be deleted, this works. Right. So the module system is not like necessarily file based. This is very commonly used for testing. So for putting tests in the same file as the code that is being tested. If you just look for like Rust tests, I think it comes up with, yeah. So config test makes this module only compile, the entire module for tests, only compile when we're running tests. And then it's just mod tests with that curly brace, and everything in here. Yeah. A file is a module is not always a file. I don't know that I would agree with that consideration, because a file can be multiple modules. But I see what you're saying, and I don't think it's wrong. Okay, so back to bitmasks. Where is my graph log? So if we look at this, mask groups 2, 2, and 2. Did I log this out too early? Yes. Let me stick that below. If you want to log out an animation graph, first you must build the animation graph. Every time you see GLTF, your brain reads it as good luck, have fun. Well, it's not bad. The good luck, have fun format. The high level GLTF extensions. A module can contain other modules. Actually, there are packages. They're the root. Crates are the unit of compilation, but a package can have multiple crates. So like lib.rs is a crate, main.rs is the crate entry point. But the cargo toml is a package. Like that kind of thing. I think what other people call packages are crates. But yeah, crates and packages both exist and they are separate concepts. Okay, so animation target ID 2, 4, and 6. I don't know why we're getting those here. Two, 4, and 6. If I had a mask group ID of 1 and a mask group ID of 2, shouldn't that be 1 and 2 here? No. Yeah, right? Oh, you rusted. Oh, no. Like the package crate thing, it's like one of those tidbits, right? Like one of those, oh, I'm going to trick you in an interview by asking you this. For most intents and purposes, like a package and a crate, like the difference doesn't matter. Okay, so we've got 2, 4, and 6. I'm wondering what these animation target IDs are, actually. I don't think we can see those. Oh, right. We're getting these massive amounts of warnings from eGUI. If I look at the character, children, armature, children. So body is an animation target, but the animation target value doesn't get shown here. Maybe we don't look at the entities. Look at the assets animation graph. This animation graph doesn't show us anything useful. We do have 3 clips, also no useful information on the clips. So we've got this animation graph. Right, directed graph, yada yada. Animation graph blend, animation graph add. So that's root and then blend node, which is additive blending in our case currently. And then we have 2 that are added below that. So theoretically, if we took this and we put it down here, we would see all of that. right? So now we have the full graph as we've constructed it. We have the root node, we have the additive blend node below the root node, we have the, I want to say the walking clip, it's the 0 indexed animation, and then the waving clip, which is the 2 indexed animation. We can see the masks here. The mask is 1 and 2. And then it has mask groups here, animation target ID, lookups, 4, 2, and 6. Can you put the link to the release notes in the description of the stream? Yeah, I could do that. Just give me a second to drop it in. Yeah, Bevy 0.15. Yeah. But you're asking for the link to the description, or the link to this release notes in the description. This is the release notes. I'm looking at the creator dashboard, and I don't know if I know how to update the description from the creator dashboard. I can see myself on stream now. Edit video. Release notes. Save. Hopefully that doesn't like kill the stream or something. Entirely possible. Yeah. So the release notes should be in the stream now. Okay, so I'm unsure how the mask group stuff is working, because I would assume that 0 was 0, that 1 maybe it's not actually doing what I think it's doing. Let's make these a little bit more exotic in terms of numbers, I guess. Let's do like 5 and 12. I feel like I'm not sure how those numbers come up. Like it's easy to put some random number here. These numbers, when we do add target to mask group, this is a mask group ID. And then add clip to mask, or add clip with mask. This is a bitmask, is my understanding. So if we use 5 and 12, then somehow the graph still has 1 and 2 for the mask IDs here. And then the mask groups get blown up. Two to the 12th? Yeah. Nope. Actually don't know. I actually don't know what the power is in new shell. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Going through all the combinations of power possibilities. 4096 and 32. So this is something. Don't know what that is. You think that's just the... I guess that's it added. So that's the root node then? The root mask? I feel like I don't know. Mask 0, mask 0. So that must be mask 0, which I guess has to include both of these. Feels a little confusing to see this. But okay, so 5 and 12, and those are the IDs. Then we're saying that we're doing this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. It's gigantic. Zero index it. Yeah, okay. So the IDs get put in as individual bit flips, but they are indexes of those bits. They are not what I thought they were and being converted to actual numbers. So because the mask here is 5, it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the 5th bit is flipped, and then this one is 12, so it's the 12th bit being flipped with a 0 index. I was thinking that this was going to come up with like the number that was the index, but I guess that's not it. I said before, but my bit flipping is not particularly notable in terms of skills. Yeah. I guess doing it every 4 is the better option, right? So then the question is, what is the bit shift operation to make that happen? Because really, I want something like this, right? It's always funny to me that these additively scale. Yeah, so I just used the wrong one here then. Well, at least you know if I ever make a video on bit shifting that I spent 12 hours looking it up before I made the video. confirming everything was correct. That doesn't look right either. Oh, it's 1. Yeah, okay. And there we go. I think I'm going to leave this here hard-coded. But yeah, so okay. TLDR, watching me struggle with bitmasks. TLDR is that these mask values, when we are adding a target to a group, is an ID. So this ID can be any number. And then, actually, I don't think it can be any number. I think it can only be the number of bits in a 64-bit integer. So I think we only get 64 groups, actually. And then we can take that ID and bit shift it. I think that's a bit shift. I don't remember. Wow, I don't need any of those. I want the docs. I don't want some random forum. The left shift operator. So 4 shift left 2 would be 6. It says 16 though. The 6th position is 0, 1, 2, 4, 8, 16. Yeah, 16 is right. Did you say should that be pipe? Is that a yeah, that should be pipe? I don't know what pipe is actually. Bit or? I actually don't know. Let's see. Let's do debug. Let's do 112. Let's do 1.5, and let's do 1.5.12. So or sort of combines the masks and ends the masks. So you think like that would be the better? I need to do this some other time, I think. This is absolutely something that I need to shore up in my knowledge. I'm just not fundamentally, I don't understand bitmasks. Like I get the binary and I get the other things. I just don't know what the operators do. Yeah. So if I have 12, then I have what? But it's not 12, right? So it would need to be 1, 5, and 1, 12 would be 4, 128. That feels really awkward to write. Like bit shift 5 to the left and then put them together. "12 is 110 and 1 is 0. Yeah. I mean, I get how you get 13 out of it. "12 is 110. So 0, 1, 2. 12 is 110? Shouldn't it be 0, 1, 2, 4, 8? 0, 1, 2. I guess 0 is 0. Now I'm thinking in indices. This is the thing that messes me up, because we're talking about indices for bit shifting, and then when we talk about the bits, the 0 is not actually there because 0 is 0, because then it's just 1, 2, 4, 8. So 1100 makes sense. Cool. Thank you all. I appreciate you all. Okay. So mask IDs are whatever. Doesn't matter. Arbitrary integers. And then those IDs can be used for... Oh, that's the other thing I want to do. Those IDs can be used for declaring the mask groups. So in this case, the wave mask or whatever, they literally do not matter. So we could just have enumerated in that sense. Like the values are arbitrary. And then when we want to actually add a clip with one of those masks or with a mask that is combined, then we need to do the conversion of those IDs into a bitmask, which we are currently doing by shifting the bit left that number of IDs. But if we wanted to combine them, we would have to do that potentially with an OR. Bit shift the 1 for both of the masks, OR them together, then we get the result that we want. I do wish that this was new typed. I wish this was like bitmask U64 or something like that. We new type a lot of stuff in Bevy, especially with like the new mesh 3D stuff or the mesh 3D meshlets or the mesh 2D stuff. I feel like we should also new type things like that, because one of these is an index, or one of these is like literally just an ID, like it doesn't matter. And the other one is actually a bitmask based on that ID. Cool. So we got our little dude walking and waving. We've got multiple substance textures here. Additive blending, animation events, all 0.15 stuff. Substance painter not related to 0.15 at all. I just wanted to use it. I'm excited for what substance painter means for being able to build better examples or better looking examples in the future. I think that one of the things that really really kind of hooks people is not the right word. Really keeps people interested in the first place is when things look good, specifically. Whether or not they are related to the actual functionality at all. It's hard for people to visualize things as being good and useful if they look like this little, you know, simple model that I have with the red squiggle on its head. Yeah, presentation is important. I don't necessarily think it's important for like people who know what you're already talking about and are interested, but it is important in showing people that it is possible to achieve a level of presentation and polish that they want to, right? If I'm talking about how to do a character controller or something and my character looks like a little stick figure, people are going to be like, oh, you can only build stick figures. If you had something that looked like, you know, Arcane did in the animation, people would be like, wow, that's really cool, even though like the logic could be the same. And this is what I was talking about with the new typing stuff. All of the new, like handle is no longer a component in 0.15. So we have to wrap the handles to our meshes and things like that in new types. I still have to start season 1. I got a recommendation that I should watch it. I've seen a lot of clips from it, so I know a lot of what happens already. But I'm still gonna watch it. I'm gonna do it from season 1. I was planning to do that this weekend, actually. Maybe next week. I don't know. Soon, though. Oh, that's the other thing we could do. Okay. We have a material here, which is... Dang. We have a material here, which is just a UV texture debug material. And while I like that on some level, I'm probably going to pull the substance stuff all out of this example anyway. The textures are kind of heavy. But it would be cool to make these, I don't know, rocks or whatever. Fancy textures materials is orthogonal to the look. You can have stuff that looks good but is low poly and not textured and vice versa. Absolutely. I don't necessarily think you need fancy high def realistic materials, but having the tools to apply even low poly stuff or modify low poly stuff or like the artistic tools to make the look is useful. You've been playing Valheim recently. Everything is low poly and low res textures, but shading and lighting all look really good. Yeah, and also like looking good is a matter of perspective too, right? We actually have gotten into this conversation multiple times now. Yeah, that does look really good. I just it just looks good. I like it would be nice if people looked at even the little, you know, demos that I do or whatever and went, wow, that looks good. Keeps people interested, you know? And the more, like, one of the most important things when you're learning something new is that you want to do it tomorrow. And I think that seeing stuff that looks good and knowing how to work with stuff that looks good is one of the things that keeps people wanting to do it tomorrow. Yeah. So this is actually a great example because the coat on this, like, I don't know if this is a statue or an enemy or I don't actually even know. But like, yes, it's low poly, but it also has this like design on it. And how do you get that design onto the texture? Right? And I think that like things like Substance Painter make this kind of thing, this kind of like extra texturing really significantly easier. Like same thing with the wall. Like, yes, okay, it's low poly, but there's a lot of texturing on that wall, you know? Like that could have been done in Photoshop or whatnot, and it could have like a manually written normal map or something. But like the metal bars, they even have texture and lighting on them and things like that. And like, I don't think that, like when people think about like Substance Painter or like any of these other kinds of programs, it's always like, hey, let me build this hyper realistic, like whatever the hell, like this thing or like this orc thing here. But it doesn't have to be that. That's just what people like to do, right? This is also textures. You also have to build the textures here. Like this dragon or whatever needs to be textured. You know? Could it be vertex colors? Sure. Could be. Do you want all of your art to be done like programmatically with vertex colors? Probably not. But even I think applying stuff like that is worth having tools to do that. Minecraft reminded you that it's more about gameplay than art. I don't know that I agree with that either. Minecraft is a beautiful game. Right? Like Minecraft has like a very specific aesthetic. I was getting nervous searching images on stream. But like this is a good looking building, right? This is a good looking like set of stuff. It's hard for me to say that Minecraft looks bad. It is voxels. Absolutely. But it also has textures for all of those voxels, etc. It has particle effects, you know? I don't know. I wouldn't say Minecraft looks bad in any sense. Yeah, I think that a lot of times when people talk about like what is good art or whatever, they tend to drift towards what is a hyper realistic style, right? And I think that detaching from hyper realism or high detail is a good thing to do. It is lighting the shadows that makes for a cool look, not the pixel voxel resolution. Yeah, I mean the lighting helps a lot, right? Lighting is super important. But you can do baked lighting, right? It doesn't need to be dynamic. Cool. So this is running. Like I chose to do a 4K texture for like this other stuff before, but it doesn't have to be. I am a little bit curious though. There's a new thing in Bevy, actually, now that I think about it. There's a 0.15 relevant thing to this conversation. Name. Gltf material name. So Gltf 3D model format allows a single mesh to be associated with multiple materials. For example, a teapot may consist of a single mesh, yet each part might have a different material. When a single mesh is assigned multiple materials, it's divided into several primitive nodes, with each primitive assigned a unique material. These were previously named mesh.index, But a new component, Gltf material name, is now added to each primitive node that has a material. So maybe that doesn't actually help us, now that I think about it. Right? This is just looking for a material that has a material name. But we should already have the material names, right? Oh, there's Gltf. Gltf meshes materials, named materials. So this named materials, right? If we go to where we're spawning on wave peak, trigger wave peak event. We actually aren't using this trigger, so let's just underscore it. We aren't using that transform query either. Interesting. So here we've got mesh material 3D with the debug material. So let's comment that out. Let's do mesh material 3D with, I don't know, whatever we're going to call this. Ball material. And then we do need to get that Gltf, which we already do in enable animations. Gltfs. So on wave peak, we do this, we do this. I am going to comment out the debug material for now. Assets.character. We loaded that in via Bevy asset loader. I remember that now. Because we didn't want to have to actually write that logic ourselves. Okay, assets character, Gltf. And then this material would be let ball material equals gltf dot named materials dot get. I actually don't know what this is going to be offhand. Maybe we look at the gltf materials. So we've got material 1. Do we think it's going to be this name? I think it's going to be that name. So material 1, floor, wall material, sphere material, capitals. So we're going to look for sphere material. We'll unwrap because it should already be loaded if this is running. And then we have a handle to a standard material, which we can then use here, which I think we have to explicitly clone. It's relevant to you because it's something you're going to have to merge into your refactor. So yeah, then we have this like concrete ball thing texturing our sphere. This is a 4K texture for a thing that is like definitely not 4K. But yeah. You've been playing with Magic Voxel, and the translucent and emit voxels make it look so cool. Translucency, like, you know, like Minecraft water, and then like emit voxels, I assume, is like particle effects. What's the lighting artifact looking thing? The lighting artifact being, you mean this like area, I guess, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but you mean this like little area that has like a bump on the sphere? That is glitter. actually. I closed out Substance Painter, but if we look at the texture material, which I think we should be able to do because I have already... The one downside of getting rid of all of the UI is you can't tell where anything is anymore. Yada yada. Yeah, so here it's concrete is one layer. It's like Photoshopped layers. This little circly thing is just glitter on top of the concrete. So you can see that here on the texture for the bigger ball. Unless you're talking about the light, the bright circle. Here, let's take a... let's bring that into this, close this out. Talking about this circle? Looks like shadow bias. That's possible. Definitely doesn't look great. Is it intersecting with a light maybe? No, I don't think I have a spotlight there. Let me check to make sure that I don't have a spotlight there or anything like that. It's possible. I did add something, I think. No, I was adding ambient light. So I think we only have a directional light here. Technically, we also do already have ambient light, but I think if we do this, it'll just get darker. The shadows are not configured for this scene at all. There was configuration, but I actually removed it. Oh, that looks funky now. It looks like the transparency is... That could also be the issue too. There is... I didn't bring it up earlier. I was going to, but I think I didn't end up doing that. There is... if we go into this scene and we look at the sphere, and we go to shading... There is an alpha texture here. This actually might be fun to actually look at. So let me actually bring this up. I think we can bring up Xcode. I think I have it running the release build, so I'm just going to kick off that build for a second. Edit scheme. The executable. I guess we don't need the debug executable. Or I guess we don't need the release, but I think I've already kicked it off, so maybe we let it happen. The debug is already built. So let's go to edit scheme, Let's do... Man, it's annoying that it doesn't give me the location that is already in. Oh well. GitHub, Rust Adventure, YouTube live events, assets. No, not assets, target, debug, YouTube. So this is just the binary that we've built from running this regularly, the debug binary. And I'm going to run that using Xcode. And I've symlinked the assets directory into the right location, is an interesting note as well. I think that this will run significantly slower. The other option is I might have run a cargo clean and killed the symlink. What is that? Oh, that's, yeah. Let me reconstruct that symlink. I think I actually only did it for the release build. So all I'm doing here is that I'm in the target directory, in the debug directory, running the binary that we've built, so the debug binary. And because Bevy is, like, it cares about where the assets are, and this is an entirely asset-based scene, I'm symlinking the assets directory into the debug directory so that when I run it using Xcode, it can just look for the assets directory to the right next to it. And everything will load. So let's do this. Let's do debug, capture GPU workload. And then we get this. So now we have the application with the issue that we were looking at captured as a debug GPU, whatever you want to call it. There are interesting things in here. Not all of them are, you know, amazing. One of the things I want to point out, though, is there's the opaque pass. And if we look at the opaque pass results, we end up with the character, the square, none of the sphere, the wall, and the floor. That's really important. Why is that really important? Because there's also the transparent pass. And if we look at the transparent pass, if I click on the right thing at some point, the transparent pass renders the sphere. So why is that the case? Well, the case that the material here, if we go back to looking at Blender, and I zoom in so that y'all can actually see this, when we exported from Substance Painter, it connected an alpha texture. So if we get rid of that alpha texture, and I save this out, and I export Gltf, all it takes is for that alpha texture to be connected at all. And you'll end up seeing this. And you can see like this alpha is like straight through to that box. So let me turn that off and we'll get our build here. And if we just look at this now, it looks very different. So it's almost guaranteed that this is related to the texture having that alpha texture defined. It's an issue related to the transparency. This is not a transparent material. Just to be clear, the alpha texture was actually pure white. It was one everywhere. So there was no transparency for the most part. I think actually I might be able to see that that glitter did or did not have transparency. I didn't actually check. Textures, sphere, material, alpha. Yeah, so the glitter is transparent, but the rest of it is not. But that still kicks it into the transparent phase. And I didn't get far enough to start looking into like whether this is important or not. So right now, for me, it's something to just keep in mind. Substance Painter will always, unless you deselect it, export this alpha texture. In some cases, that's what you want, right? If this glitter actually needed to be alpha transparent, like which it technically is, then I need to go fix it, go work in it. I thought we enabled OIT by default, but I guess we didn't. Let me do that actually, because that would be a fun test. So let's go back to using the alpha, and I'll re-export this. One thing I will say is that no matter what you're doing, if you're taking stuff from Blender and you're exporting it to be used in Bevy, you have to keep in mind Blender is capable of significantly more things in that space than Bevy will be able to do. We talked about this a little bit earlier with like programmatic shaders and geometry nodes and things like that. Another example is the 2D drawing tool inside of Blender, which I can't remember the name of for some reason. But you can use that to convert to curves, but you can't get grease pencil directly exported. Okay, so we have the alpha version exported. Let's run this to make sure that we still see the issues. Because the concrete is not transparent, so, you know, there might be something else happening here. And then order independent transparency is new in 0.15. Let me figure out how to, wow, that's a lot of OIT. I thought OIT just became our default, but maybe not. I think that was true for ambient occlusion, but not for order independent transparency. Maybe in the migration guide. Nope. Order independent. Nope. I know there's an example though, so I guess we're going down to the examples. Where would it be though? I don't remember which folder it's in. Probably 3D. Order independent transparency. OIT. I guess we turn MSA off. I think that's on by default, so that's fine. We need the order independent transparency settings. And just having the settings on the camera looks to be enough. So let's go find our camera. This is our camera 3D. We aren't using render layers. We're going to turn MSA off because that was the suggestion in the example. We will enable order independent transparency. And we can run. And I haven't tried this. I don't know what impact this is going to have on this particular scene. So the shadows are gone. that it was creating, right? The glitter alpha looks like it is alphaing all the way through to the cube. The cube, I think I disconnected the alpha on the cube already. Yes, I did. The sphere back here doesn't have it. Everything else I've disconnected the alpha on. All the shadows, not just the ball shadows. Is it? Oh, it is, isn't it? Let's turn order independent transparency off for a second. So that's the directional light shadow on the balls. And then there's a shadow from the cube onto the... Oh, after I changed the cascade settings? Yeah, that makes sense. Let's just give ourselves a little bit of a level set here. So now we have shadows. Shadows for the balls, shadows on the balls, shadows on the sphere, shadows for the character, etc. And then we'll turn order independent transparency on. I think I'm not sure. I feel like I would have to stop these from moving and look at them. I will say the one on the ball over here now looks a little bit better. It's very interesting. You can tell if you look right at the edge, on the left edge. See if I can snag it. Nope. Try again. Oh, now I don't realize which one it was. Okay, let me get rid of both of these. Okay, now we're looking. You can kind of see here. Can I zoom on this? Yeah. So on the ball over here, you can actually start to see the glitter, which is cool. And if you start to look over here, it's interesting that that kind of like does a weird thing towards the edge. It is receiving the shadow from the ball in front of it, but the glittery area, like the index of refraction, kind of... I don't know what is causing that effect. The low ball is transparent. What do you mean by that? They should both be. The material on both of these should be the same. The high and the low. Right, like this sphere and this sphere are the same. They are rotated differently for some reason, but I think that is just an impact of us not considering rotation when we were considering the empty transition or transform. Maybe no backface culling and no shadows on the faces viewed through the hole. No backface culling. I think I turned backface culling off for some stuff while I was doing debugging. So we can definitely do that. Actually, this setting won't affect it. But you'll see for like some of these others, or maybe you won't see. Yeah, so this wall I turned on backface culling using the camera while I was doing some debugging and stuff like that. It's definitely interesting. I don't know that I fully understand what is going on there. Oh yeah, theoretically, like if I was actually building a game here, this would first of all not be a 4K texture for a ball that is, 50 pixels high. And also, yeah, if it's stylized, it doesn't really matter in the first place. And this is just like some random glitter on like theoretically, I think this was concrete. I don't remember what the material was supposed to be. I think I'm more interested in the impact of that alpha texture. That alpha texture definitely makes a difference in terms of some of the other things rendering. I was noticing that this wall on the right and the cube, when they had the alpha texture, they were actually rendering behind the floor. And they aren't actually transparent, so I just didn't do that. I turned them back into opaque and I removed the alpha texture. It was a little confusing that happened even though the alpha texture was completely white for those, because they don't have any transparency. This glitter is just kind of like a thing that I decided to do last minute, but everything else in the scene is opaque. Where are we? 11. Is there anything else y'all want to see for 015 now that the release is out? Is there anything y'all were looking forward to? But that should still change the material alpha mode from opaque to blend. It would be, yeah, it would be. That's what I'm saying. I think that the other thing is I'm not sure if that glitter is supposed to be another layer on top of something else, or if it's supposed to be something else, right? Like, should that glitter even have extra alpha? I don't know, because we put it on top of a concrete block or whatever. Yes. Alpha mode blend has the issue of triangle ordering, absolutely. I have messed with the meshlet stuff, actually. I haven't messed with it in 015. Do I have it on? No, I don't. I don't have it on this computer, unfortunately. I don't think they have a Mac build is the issue. But I have Gaia as well, which is a procedural landscape generator. Gaia doesn't run on Mac. Yeah, exactly. But the point being that I've made really big Gaia landscapes because I have Windows too. And I've converted those into meshlets and rendered them inside of Bevy. Let's not open my Blue Sky account on stream. I definitely posted the images, which is why I'm looking for them. There we go. About 3 months ago, dang. So this is Bevy meshlet stuff with Gaia. And this is what it looks like. So this was very cool to play with. I kind of want to do like a ship flying game with this technology, because I want to do something where like the landscape isn't supposed to change and whatnot, and it's just supposed to be very pretty as you fly through. But yeah, I have played with the meshlet stuff. But yeah, I mean, I was just doing like landscape generation stuff. I was using an EXR file for all the coloring and stuff. It was all done in Gaia. I exported to Blender, exported from Blender to Bevy, used Bevy to process it into meshlets, and then rendered it. The meshlet stuff is incredibly cool in Bevy, like incredibly cool. I am infinitely impressed that the person working on it was able to get so far. They also actually wrote a post. I wonder, did it get linked in the doc? Or linked in the release notes? I feel like it should have. Yes. There's a blog post in the release notes about the meshlet stuff. And this stuff looks great. This scene is by Griffin. Griffin has also made some other really beautiful looking things. But yeah, if you're interested in like meshlets and how meshlets are progressing, the author writes like an in-depth post basically every release. And it's really, really, really cool. It's honestly, it's so incredible that like they take the time to just be like, hey, this person made these contributions. I got this from those locations. These talks gave me more information. We did this. We tried that. This didn't work. We went with that, etc. Let's see what they have listed in the. Rendering got 5 times faster. There's a headline for you. That would be a video if I was more of a clickbaiter. Meshlet rendering in Bevy 0.15 is 5 times faster. I can't bring myself to make that title though. I mean, it's true. So like, it's less clickbait, but that's just not my vibe. See, culling level of detail selection is up next, or improving it anyway. Ooh, streaming of meshlet vertex data is going to be very, very cool. Oh man, just having massive like meshlet stuff and just streaming it in off disk, and that would be so cool. But yes, meshlets are very, 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 very cool. and they are very, very fun to play with. The one thing that I will caution against is it is both experimental and also figuring out how to save out a meshlet, like how to process it and save it out, is non-trivial. Is there any work to be done on the engine side for the direct storage access thing? I don't know what the direct storage access thing is. Faster but requires an additional GPU extension support flag, so it does not work on your old GPU anymore. Yeah, unfortunate. I think that that will happen more and more probably as ray tracing gets picked up more and more too. Especially as the hardware ray tracing stuff. What is the direct storage access thing? Is that WGPU? Should I be looking at the WGPU repo? I know that there's like an underlying desire for people to like figure out what the next generation of rendering architecture looks like. From Material X to a whole bunch of other stuff, and Weasel, which if you're not aware is like people are working on the like extensions to WGSL, so that instead of doing, I don't know if any of you were working with standard materials before the standard material extension happened, but pre-standard material extension, you had to basically copy and paste all of the WGSL code, which was really painful to do and really painful to maintain. The WG or the standard material extension got better, but is not perfect, we'll say. And there's people working on basically making it so that you can do things much more easily in WGSL and doing a whatchamacallit? Lost my train of thought. Is the GPU reading directly from the drive instead of CPU having to write a buffer before dispatching? Oh, interesting. I'm not aware of that at all, actually. Yeah, I don't know. I missed that. Is there conversation about that in the rendering channel or something? I've been kind of out of it for like the last month, I guess. UE5 megalights, like, is this just like a request for it? Pipeline rendering, yada yada, GPU driven rendering by default. Yeah, everything is getting pushed more towards the GPU or GPU driven. One day we'll have multi-draw indirect and, you know, etc. But the multi-draw, what is a GPU BIOS thing? The reading directly from the drive from the GPU? Oh, yes, they're going to work on this. So the person who's doing meshlets and virtual geometry is also planning on doing megalights. That's so cool. I'm so in awe of their skills. GPU direct storage, yeah. Let's see, GPU direct storage. WGPU maybe. Absolute goat for sure. Storage resource, type of whatever. I'm not seeing anything surface in the WGPU repo. When I think about lower level stuff, it's basically like if WGPU supports it or if it can be an extension to WGPU, then it's possible. But if WGPU doesn't support it, then it becomes much harder. I don't see anything for direct storage. Direct path to storage. That would be very cool. One of the other things I want to do is do more compute shader to rendering work. Radiance cascades are still on my list. I'm just never getting around to it. It's very cool. What else is in? I think I'm going to do a completely separate video on required components. I feel like I did a video on observers and that seemed well received. It seemed like it helped people. I feel like required components needs a similar video. The other stuff, like, I don't know, fog volumes and stuff might get a short, but like it's actually, now that I think about it, defining the density texture for a fog volume is probably something people won't be able to figure out how to do. So that might deserve its own treatment. The stuff is very, very cool though. Oh, I also didn't cover this in the video either. There's some great new, like everybody keeps asking for ways to modify images easier. And now there's a set of functions to actually do pixel by pixel manipulation of an image. Yes, please, require components tutorial. That will definitely happen. I think my plan for 0.15, like content in general, I have to do the workshops, which are going to be longer term. They're going to be over the next month or so. And then there's a bunch of features here that didn't really make it into the video for 0.15 and deserve their own video, or there's some things that are just too big to fit in that video, like required components. I had a 0.14 project using the Quickstart and you're having trouble porting the widgets over. In the PR for the repo, they replaced child spawn with child build spawn. Do you know why? Yes, I do know why. They also renamed it. So I assume that you used Bevy Quickstart, and I think Bevy New 2D is the old Quickstart repo. So there's that too. There were like, this didn't stop changing after I made this video. So it almost, I think probably for the next jam or whenever this becomes relevant again, I'll make a new video. But this changed a lot very quickly. The child build spawn thing is, I think, still in here. They were, one of the things they did in this repo was build their own abstractions for stuff. And some of those abstractions came from like other libraries, and some of them were just like built inside of here. It doesn't look like it's in here. Did they get rid of the child builder spawn thing? Is that what you're saying? DevTools main. They used to have a special trait in here that extended, yes, this. So they built their own trait. They built traits for widgets and they built trait for spawn. This is kind of an extension trait. And they added it to commands and child builder. I know what this is trying to mirror, but I don't think it's relevant that it's trying to mirror that. I personally don't really like that this is in here, but some people have found it useful, I think. What they're trying to do here is basically like simplify the spawning of bundles and stuff. It has a cost. I don't know that it's worth including in this, but I'm also not the person who built this example. So like my opinion doesn't really matter in that respect. You mean they replaced it with child builder spawn, not child build spawn. Let's look at the blame for this. Yeah, this was done a long time ago. I don't know. Like I understand that people build things like this in their projects all the time. I don't know that a like semi-official template should be like detouring off the path in that sense. But yeah, generally speaking, they tried to do a bunch of stuff like this. They tried to make it a little easier to do nested spawning and things like that. If I go to the PR for the update, which PR is it? Do you know the number? Oh, update to 15. Gotcha. You're talking about this. Yeah. They didn't say why they did the child build thing. I wish there was more information there. I will say that everything internally moved from bundles to required components. So I wonder if because of the abstractions they had set up in here, if they had to switch to a manual call here instead of the pre-existing stuff. Let's see, children spawn, because this spawn thing for them was like that trade extension that we just showed. And then child build spawn. Spawns an entity with the given bundle and inserts it into the parent entity's children. Yeah, so like what they're trying to do is do nested spawning, which like isn't really well supported yet. It comes up with a duplicate symbol for spawn or something like that. You can't remember exactly why. You can still use children spawn. You just need to include the trait. Oh, so it got removed from default. That would make sense. There was a bunch of like visibility access stuff that happened at some point. This might have been one of those things. This is from June, so I think that was in 0.14. I don't remember when the release was. Yeah. So Bevy hierarchy, child build. This isn't long for the world. Complexity isn't worth it here. Okay. So eventually this is going to disappear. It looks like anyway. All of this to say that the reason that you're seeing complexity here, the reason that you're seeing maybe workarounds in that PR is that we don't have the Bevy scene notation. We don't have a great way of spawning nested versions of things. If you are looking for something like that, then I can't believe it's not BSN is an option. This is Alice's studio. Alice's and somebody else's that I can't remember off the top of my head. But it's I can't believe it's not BSN. This is basically a way to spawn nested entities. So you might want to look into this. But yeah, this is basically a long chain of like spawning nested entities, spawning things that require children, like buttons with things inside of them, UI elements that are, you know, text and things below them, is not particularly ergonomic, and people are trying to find something that is better. So there's a little bit of thrash there. I don't think I ran into this issue porting any of my stuff though, which is interesting. With children spawn. Maybe I just pulled it in, didn't even think about it. But yeah, we're getting to the end of the stream. Last call for anybody that wants me to talk about something for 0.15. Otherwise, oh, custom cursors. Gotta start doing custom cursors. Yeah, you just ported to 0.15 and did that? Yeah, one of the things about spawn as a function name is it's in that extension trait, and it's also used in other places, and it's used in that child build, and yeah. So I could see it being a duplicate symbol pretty easily. Uniform mesh sampling is something I'm super happy to have. We wrote this in the laundry game last cycle, and it was very, very annoying to write. But yeah, I got to pick a new game to build for the 0.15 stuff. I want to pick something with some animation. I want to pick something with some texturing needs and stuff like that. Something that can make use of some of the 0.15 features. I don't know if I want to care about fog and stuff like that, but definitely like picking selection, maybe bubbling events, and animation. We'll see. I don't know what the next game is going to be. But I think that's going to be it for the stream for today. So thanks everyone for coming, and I will see you next week. Every week, Saturday morning, couple hours, we do some Bevy stuff. If you are interested in 0.15, I have a video on the channel up now for 0.15. If you are interested in more Bevy stuff, you can subscribe for This Week in Bevy, which happens every week. And then, yeah, I'll be doing Advent of Code this month too. So there will be a bunch of Advent of Code videos. Have a great rest of your weekend, y'all.